Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Two-Way Tonight. I'm Mark Halperin. Thank you for watching. It's 6 o'clock Eastern Time, 3 o'clock in San Francisco. I never can remember. Is Columbus, Ohio Central Time or is it Eastern Time? I don't know. It's some other time in Columbus or it's the same time. Thank you for watching. This is the Two-Way Radio Network, also video. If you're watching on YouTube or X, don't put smack in the chat. I can see you. Don't do it. And if you're watching on Two-Way, please raise your hand. We'd love to have you be part of the conversation. As long as peace, love, and understanding is what animates your connection to the platform, we'd love to have you with us. This is a special episode of Two-Way Tonight because we have a new sponsor, and we'll tell you about them in just a moment. Anywho, thank you for joining. Lots of news to get through, particularly pertaining to matters emanating from the president in Scotland, where he just spent the day with the Prime Minister of the UK, and they had a lengthy press conference and a mini press conference and all sorts of photo ops. And yes, Dean, the answer is the president's still talking. We'll dip in live. Thing continues. And there's some other news connected to some other stuff, and we'll talk about that. There's this thing in Cincinnati. I'm very curious to know what our two guests think about that, because it's a thing in Cincinnati. If you don't know about it, you'll learn about it shortly, but it involves one of those Rashomon things where everybody sees what they want to see. President talked about a lot of stuff, including the Epstein matter and the Middle East and trade. And J.D. Vance talked about the Epstein matter too. We'll show you some of that. I guess those are the three big things: Cincinnati, Israel, Gaza, and Maxwell. And if those are the topics, who better to join us in all the land than our two guests tonight, who will be brought in shortly. Our guest tonight, radio talk show host extraordinaire, Larry O'Connor of WMAL in Washington, and his eponymous, one of my favorite words, eponymous, Larry's eponymous podcast. Larry O'Connor will join us now. And Michael LaRosa, former Joe Biden advisor and Democrat, two truth tellers. We love truth tellers on the program. And they'll come in and we'll watch some videos and they'll talk about them. And then again, eager to hear your questions and comments. So please, if you're here on the Two-Way platform and you want to be in on the conversation, I'd urge you, implore you, ask you, raise your hand, be part of the conversation. Let's bring in Larry. Larry, you do 4 hours live a day or 5?
4 hours live in the morning, 5 to 9 a.m. Eastern time, just like Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah.
And I also do a 1 hour live stream at noon Eastern time for Town Hall Media.
So that's 5 hours a day.
Yes, sir.
5 hours a day.
So I'm really happy to add this to my day. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Larry, is all of Ohio in Eastern time?
I believe it is. Yeah. I used to live in Michigan, so of course we hate Ohio.
That is Eastern time. That I know.
Yeah.
Okay. And how's your summer going, Larry? We haven't seen you in a while, so
it's good. You know, I was just in LA for the weekend, which is like always fun to go from DC to LA just for a weekend.
Did you have a Dodgers game? What'd you do?
A lot of travel. I had a high school reunion. I don't wish to disclose what year it was. I'll let the chat guess.
Don't disclose, but did you look younger than pretty much everybody?
Did.
Yeah,
I did.
I'm not surprised.
It was great. It was quite
Have you been to a lot of reunions before now?
I've been to one before this one.
And what prompted you to go to this one?
My youngest child just graduated high school, and so it feels like this level of achievement. I can sit and I can sort of talk about my family and talk about my kids, and also actually not to bring down the room, but my dad passed away this year, and I'm starting to sense mortality.
Yeah. All right, Michael LaRosa, you haven't been here in a while either. How's your summer going?
Good. Traveling and working.
Where you been, dude? Where you been?
I just got back from the Canary Islands over the weekend. I was in
that beats
Vienna.
LA.
I don't know. Where are the Canary Islands?
Off the coast of Africa, right?
The
Balearic Islands.
Huh? Michael froze? Michael's frozen.
Spain.
That's right.
Spain. That's right.
Spain. Michael, you're frozen. I want to hear about the Canary Islands, but you're frozen. Larry, let's just chat while Michael unfreezes.
Yeah.
Any activities at the reunion out of the ordinary? Three-legged race, egg toss, anything like that?
You know, a bunch of us went on a hike in El Moro Canyon down in Orange County.
Is that an approved event or just a
beforehand. No, it was
freelance?
sort of a sideline. We said, well, I mean, it wasn't unapproved. I think the reunion committee allowed for it to happen. We got a dispensation. We did a 5-mile hike in the canyon right off Pacific Coast Highway there between Newport Beach and Laguna. It was fantastic.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Michael may never come back, so we'll keep talking.
You know what? More for me to say.
Yeah. How much do you script your morning show?
0. Oh, well, the ads, the endorsements, of course,
Yeah.
because I don't want to screw that up.
But everything else, there's not even notes.
Yeah, you can tell when people are reading. Oh, I have notes. Of course I have notes. But not notes. I have references that I pull from. If I ever read from an article to deliver factoids about a story, I always give the source, of course.
Yeah.
Some hosts don't do that, and it annoys the hell out of me.
And me. You know I'm reading on prompter right now, right? This
No,
line.
we're not.
This line about reading on
You
prompter.
can tell.
Somebody bring Michael back in when and if he comes back. So Larry, we haven't talked in a while. What's your overview of the Epstein matter as it pertains to President Trump? Are you much ado about nothing?
This is
Deeply
hilarious.
suspicious?
I was sure you would ask my overview of the crimes related to the Russian collusion hoax and the cover-up that
I might ask about that too, because that's a
Yeah.
big topic on this program.
With Epstein, I really listen. I think that it was completely fumbled from the beginning. I think that this is a media story more than it is, sadly, a legal story. I wish we could get to the crimes. I wish we could actually find out who else is prosecutable. But I think, sadly, there's in this case, I think that the truth is actually, sadly, as frustrating and as unexciting as most people would like it to be, which is there are a lot of names referenced there, but there's not enough evidence to bring criminal charges. And therefore, yeah, it kind of would be wrong to throw those names out there without actually having them defend themselves. Any name in those files, Mark, at this point will be presumed guilty, and they have to prove their own innocence. And that's not how we operate in this country.
Yeah. Larry, let me ask you this, because this may feed on or build on what you said. Can you name a single person? You don't need to name a person, but can you think of one who was allegedly involved in a child sex trafficking ring? People say child sex trafficking ring. I know that it's been alleged by some of the victims or alleged victims that Epstein himself engaged in improper activity with underage girls. But this charge of a sex trafficking ring, I've just never seen any specific about that documented or associated with a particular person. Am I wrong about that?
I think it's all been innuendo and rumor and assumptions. I think that people know that children were trafficked for sex. They know that Ghislaine Maxwell
to Epstein, but to anybody else.
Right, exactly. No, the only thing that has been documented and proven in court was that they were trafficked for Epstein. But I think that the assumption has always been that there were other men they were trafficked to.
But what's that assumption based on?
I think its assumption is based on all of the relationships that Mr. Epstein and Ms. Maxwell had with very rich and very powerful and very well-connected people. And you can't deny some of the photographic evidence of Prince Andrew with an underage girl and Bill Clinton with a girl. I don't know if it's an underage girl, but you know that picture of the girl giving him a massage. Yeah. So those photographs, I think, naturally and understandably lead to the idea that there are very rich, very powerful people who can do the very worst possible thing we can imagine and get away with it because they are rich and powerful. And that's what is maddening about this story, Mark. And that's why people want more answers.
All right, we're going to talk more about Epstein, but you raised the question, and I find it frustrating to talk to people, most people, about the Russiagate matter. But I won't find it frustrating regarding you because you're a clear-headed individual. What is Tulsi Gabbard alleging that causes President Trump to say that President Obama committed treason? What is she alleging he did that would be treasonous if proven?
Well, to be fair, I believe that Tulsi Gabbard has presented a lot of declassified intelligence and has handed those over and referred those to the Attorney General to actually potentially bring criminal charges. Tulsi Gabbard has thrown around the word treason quite a bit and conspiracy. And conspiracy is the key word here. It's funny how conspiracy's gotten kind of a bad name. That if you think that there's a conspiracy, that means it's some wild-eyed, you have to stand in front of a map with all the red lines connecting people. Conspiracy is an actual crime. It's when two or more people work together to do something nefarious. And that doesn't mean it's a conspiracy theory. I think it's a conspiracy fact. We can start with the conspiracy to defraud the United States. That's a real crime. That's, I think, hold on, I wrote it down. 18 U.S.C. 371. Two or more persons conspire to commit an offense against the United States or to defraud the United States.
Right. And what was the thing they did to defraud?
We have evidence of that. Well, we have evidence that Barack Obama directed his intelligence community, Comey, Clapper, and Brennan, to go back and find intelligence to back up the conclusions that they had already reached, which, as you know, Mark, is not how you're supposed to work in intelligence.
It's definitely not. But would that be defrauding the United States? Because if that's defrauding the United States, a lot of people have defrauded the United States.
Well, then let's bring those charges up then. Just because a lot of people do that and they don't actually face any criminal consequences. They also conspired to injure, threaten, or intimidate a person of their constitutional rights. Donald Trump's constitutional rights were infringed or attempted to be infringed by these people. He won the presidency. He had the right to take office without being encumbered or undermined. And he was encumbered and undermined by some of the most powerful people in this country. And don't you find it odd that the day after Obama directed this intelligence community assessment, there were immediately leaks to the NBC News, New York Times, and Washington Post about that very intelligence community assessment?
I don't find it odd at all, for the same reason you don't actually find it odd. It's unfortunately all too predictable.
But why? But you know, Mark, because you've received anonymous leaks before from people in the government. The one untold story in all of those reports is quite possibly the biggest part of the story, which is who leaked it and why. Why do you think they leaked that to the New York Times?
To damage Donald Trump.
Correct, and that's a crime.
Who's been charged with that crime based on
no, just because no one's been charged with it. You know what's funny about this? And everyone said, where's the crime? Where's the crime? Guess what's not a crime? Russian collusion. We spent 2 years talking about how Trump was guilty of Russian collusion, and that isn't a crime.
I know.
And yet here we have bona fide crimes of conspiracy to obstruct.
I'm still looking for an analog where people are charged. Michael, you staying this time or are you leaving?
I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay. Are you staying? Are you staying?
I'm trying to stay.
Okay. Right. Michael, I don't know how much of what you heard Larry say you heard, but do you believe that Barack Obama committed a crime potentially?
No.
No.
And I don't think Secretary of State Marco Rubio does either, since he sort of validated everything that was in the final analysis, the intelligence analysis.
If you're going to have as your standard for Trump administration officials, if they said something before, they believe it now, you'd have to believe the vice president still thinks Donald Trump is the Republican Party's Hitler.
Yes, that's true.
I think we have to account for some change.
Well,
if I could jump in, did Marco Rubio have the declassified information that we've just learned from those meetings in the Oval Office when he was heading that?
He better have.
I think he had some of it. I think he had some.
No, this was all protected. Barack Obama claimed executive privilege on these memos. He did not have these at his disposal.
Yeah. So, Michael,
let me ask a better question, if I may. Michael, do you believe that John Brennan perjured himself when he said that the Steele dossier was not utilized for the intelligence community assessment?
Yes, Michael, I'll help you. That's an easy one.
He was under oath, under congressional oath, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
He also, by the way, gave testimony to Mr. Durham, the special prosecutor.
Yeah. Yes.
Let me ask you this question, Larry. Now that we're bogged down in this story.
Oh, I don't feel bogged down at all.
I know you don't. You feel liberated.
Are you kidding?
I hate this story.
Brennan's not a stupid person. So did he think they'd never figure out he committed perjury?
That is correct. I think that they never thought that Trump would get back into office. I think that they thought they had won.
Interesting. All right.
But Trump was never like, there's no, can somebody tell me what the new part is here? He wasn't accused. Yes, I don't think we ever accused the Russians of changing the election results. I think the point was that they were trying to mess with our system. We proved.
No.
If
you go back and read the intelligence community assessment, it found that Russia had successfully interfered with the 2016 election, and they did it to benefit Donald Trump. Neither of those things were supported by the actual raw intelligence. Although
they're both true.
Well, no, they're not. They didn't successfully interfere with the election. How did they successfully interfere?
No, yes, they did. They did. They didn't successful. They weren't successful at changing the vote count.
Yeah,
I didn't say that. But how did they successfully interfere with the election?
And well, just the same way they successfully interfered with trying to turn off our electric grid. This has been going on forever. I mean, we found that out in 2018 and 19 as well.
Larry,
can you show me the evidence that Russia affected the outcome of the election?
Do you believe the DNC and Podesta emails were hacked or leaked?
I haven't seen evidence. I've heard people give testimony to that, but you know that the actual servers that were hacked were never turned over to the FBI. James Comey said that under oath, right?
Yeah.
But even if they did hack the DNC, how was that interfering with the election? I mean, by that token, you could say that the 50 intelligence professionals who said that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation interfered with the election.
And I do. They did interfere with the election.
And but there's more
as did Facebook. Well, I don't think you can measure. People always try to measure these things and say, if not for X, the other person would have won. I don't think you can measure that finally.
Well, isn't that the definition of successfully interfering with an election?
No, because they made the election closer than it was. They directionally shifted it. You don't have to change the outcome to have interfered with the election.
I accept lifelong Republican law enforcement officer Robert Mueller's conclusion that he didn't clear him of not unwittingly being helped by the Russians. He just said he didn't collude with the Russians. That doesn't mean that they weren't helped by the Russians.
But I don't think that there's evidence to support that Vladimir Putin or the Russians wanted Trump to win. In fact, if they did, why didn't they dump all of that dirt they had on Hillary?
Well, I think what concerned everybody and what still concerned people was Trump's own behaviors that led to that suspicion amongst the intelligence community, his rather bizarre unwillingness.
All right.
Well, Michael, you can make that case, but that was not in the intelligence community assessment.
That's also true.
That wasn't evidence that was
utilized. Also true. All right, hold on. Let's dance around a little bit. Again, raise your hand if you want in on, I would say this conversation, but I would more accurately say these conversations. Here's the president. So the president this morning, it was about 8:50, I think, and we're getting ready to go on the air for two-way for the morning meeting with Dan and Sean, and the president started having this press conference with Starmer, and he talked at a photo op with him right before the press availability, not press conference. So at 9 o'clock, we decided we're going to take it live and see where it goes. Assume 20 minutes, whatever, because we thought it was silly to start talking about all the issues we were going to talk about when Trump was about to address them all in the press availability. We just thought, well, let's listen. Yeah. I had no idea the thing would go an hour and we eventually cut out of it, but it went through our entire show. It went through almost all the way to 10 o'clock Eastern time. I'm not obsessed with the Epstein story. In fact, I continue to not fully understand what all the hullabaloo is about. I understand it somewhat, but not fully. In any event, he hadn't been asked about Epstein for like the first 35 minutes. And like magic clockwork, right after we dropped out of it and started gabbing it away, Trump, I don't know what that was, Trump got asked about it. So here he is being asked, this is number 12, Sam, if he might pardon Ghislaine Maxwell.
Maybe it's not, I don't know, but maybe it's slightly different.
Mr. President, the president completely ruled out a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell when you landed. Is that something you would ever consider, and why?
Pardon for who?
For Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, I'm allowed to give her a pardon, but nobody's approached me with it. Nobody's asked me about it. It's in the news about that aspect of it, but right now it would be inappropriate to talk about it. So,
Mr. President,
all right. So I want to ask you both two questions. Michael, you first. Do you think Donald Trump will pardon her?
Without being, I don't see how. No, I don't think he will.
Okay.
I don't.
Larry, do you think he will?
No.
Okay. What do you think the betting markets say, Michael?
I'm guessing it's probably pretty split.
Okay, split. Larry, what do you think?
I'd be with Michael on that. I bet it's split.
All right. So Polymarket is our new sponsor here. They're our partners. They're a cryptocurrency-based predictions market that offers a platform where investors can place bets on various future events. And so here's the Polymarket. They call them markets. Here's the Polymarket market. Will Trump pardon Maxwell by the end of 2026? And there you can see the trend. It is. We'll blow this up a little bit so everybody can see it a little more clearly. There you go. You can see where it is now, 21% chance, only 21%. So not really split. Less than about 1/5 of people now saying it's never gone much above 25. All right. Next question. Polymarket. Will Maxwell be released from custody this year in 2025? Will she be released from custody? And as you can see, that also just about a 20% chance. You can see these two results and follow the action on polymarket.com. Interesting. Now, we'll come back. We'll look at one other result in just a moment. Larry, where's this story headed? What's the next Maxwell shoe to drop?
I honestly don't know. I mean, it's so frustrating, Mark, when we deal with, facts and information and try to form our opinions based on what we know, and there's so much that we don't know here. I almost wish the DOJ and the FBI would treat all of these files like Elon Musk treated the Twitter files and hand them over to an independent journalist team like Matt Taibbi and Mark Schellenberger and let them sort of go through it and redact what needs to be redacted and reach some conclusions here, because nobody will be trusted on how this ends up. All the speculation about whether Trump will pardon Maxwell or not is sort of weird, considering we just lived through all of those last-minute auto pen pardons with Joe Biden, including his son, that he promised he wouldn't do, but he ended up doing them anyway. So a president promising or not promising to pardon or not pardon seems irrelevant now after what went through with Joe Biden.
Michael, do you have a sense of what shoe could drop next or will drop next?
I don't, and I gotta say, I'm a big true crime junkie, huge one. But this one I thought was, I kind of got all I needed to know about this a long time ago. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if there is something that is being hidden, I would think the Biden administration would be in more trouble for withholding it and being less transparent than the Trump administration, right?
Yeah,
maybe.
I would think so. They were on the watch for longer, right?
Yeah.
I think the difference is, this is getting a lot of play right now because Donald Trump is, had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein before the famous blow up. One of the only people, by the way, prominent people who actually distanced himself from Jeffrey Epstein.
But Larry, did you see what happened today on that point regarding his distancing himself from Jeffrey Epstein? And this goes to, I'm a one note Johnny on this. I continue to believe that, given that the president was close friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and given that despite his disavowals, he seems to be in charge of the government's response, they were very close friends. He shouldn't be involved in this. Up until today, every account I've ever seen or heard about why the president broke from Jeffrey Epstein, including from White House spokespeople, was that Epstein was a creep.
There was behavior at Mar-a-Lago
that he did something with a daughter of either a member. I've read it's a member. I've read it's an employee. Did you see what the president said today? The reason was,
I missed it. No.
He said, "Okay, this is interesting because you agree with me that up until now that's been the story.
Yeah,
some problem today. The president himself said that Jeffrey Epstein hired away an employee from Mar-a-Lago. Trump told him not to do it again, and he did it again." And that's why he broke from him. Now, maybe if you run a club in South Florida, you lose a good employee for somebody that makes that person a creep. But it was always alleged that Trump had and it's kind of, that was the assertion that he had kind of a consciousness raising, an ethical aversion. Now, again, Larry, you've employed people. Somebody steals your employees twice. Yeah, F them. But that's a much different story. And I don't know if that's the true story, but it goes to the case. And I'm not saying the president's current story is false. It goes to my premise. We do not know enough about their relationship. We just don't.
I know, but I can't get past the idea that during the 4 years of the Biden administration, when so many allegations were brought up against Donald Trump in multiple jurisdictions, that the Merrick Garland Justice Department, if they had that information that was somewhat damning, they wouldn't use it.
I don't agree, because I think what you're saying is off base on respectfully two ways. One is Merrick Garland, my line about Merrick Garland, he makes Eric Holder look like Rahm Emanuel in terms of political sophistication. So I think he would have snuffed out anything that, if he didn't think there was a reason to release it. He didn't leak a lot, that Justice Department. But number two, again, that's not the issue. It's not whether Trump committed a crime, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know. It's, I want to understand why he had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and what it consisted of. That's to me the germane question. Now,
but how do we know that information is
We don't-
being hidden?
Yeah, I mean that's.
we don't know. I
But
don't
the
think
problem-
it is.
But Mark, the premise of your question is it doesn't matter if it's a crime. Well, as far as the FBI and Justice Department, that's all.
I agree. I'm more interested in the political question than the criminal one because I have no reason to believe the president committed a crime. But I do want to understand why he's comfortable directing all of this about someone who is his close friend. I don't think Republicans would tolerate a Democratic president who had a many-year-long relationship with someone who was the center of a national controversy, just making all the decisions.
I don't know if close friend is a good characterization.
Oh, okay. Larry, do you know my definition of close friend?
What?
He was at his wedding, right?
Okay. Well, yeah, but so is Hillary.
Yeah.
Three-part test. You have to have done two of them. Okay. You have to confide in the other person. You have to have seen a movie together in a theater back when that was a thing. So we got to find a replacement for that. And you have to have been in each other's homes. Two of those three, I believe, are true about Trump and Epstein. So yes, close friends.
Okay. Well, that's the Mark Halperin definition.
Oh, it's a scientific test.
Is it?
Larry, apply it to anyone who you consider a close friend. And I guarantee you've done at least two of the three.
Gosh, Sean Spicer is a
Apply it.
close friend.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
All right, let's talk about, let's go high. As Michelle Obama said, well, you go low, I go high. Tariffs. Gerard Baker, a new column in the Wall Street Journal, will be in the hard copy tomorrow, whatever that means. That's like going to a movie theater. Who does that? And he says, even though the journal obviously is anti-tariff, he's like, wait a minute, the tariffs are not destroying the economy. Now he says maybe they haven't destroyed the economy yet, or maybe there's countervailing things, or maybe the tariffs aren't going to destroy the economy. Who else thinks that besides Gerard Baker? His American doppelganger. Roll number 11, please.
Now, I remember along with probably most people, were saying at the beginning.
Now he does his show high, by the way.
By the 4th of July, somebody had to think how the country was, the economy was going to be tanked by then. And I was kind of like, well, that seems right to me, but that didn't happen. Now, it could happen tomorrow. I'm just saying that's reality. So let's work first from the reality of that, not from I just hate Donald Trump. Because that's boring and doesn't get us anywhere and leads you to dishonesty. Because the truth is, I don't know what his strategy is. But look, the stock market is at record highs. I know not everybody lives by the stock market, but I also drive around. I don't see a country in a depression at all. I see people out there just living their lives. And I would have thought, and I got to own it, that these tariffs were going to fucking sink this economy by this time, and they didn't.
You guys know who that other guy was?
No.
Tyler Brian Cohen or something.
Brian Taylor Cohen.
Oh,
Brian
the
Taylor
MSNBC
Cohen.
producer.
Liberal podcaster. Okay, Michael, where are you on the tariffs? They're going to destroy the economy. They are destroying the economy. They won't destroy the economy. They might destroy the economy. Where are you? Those are your choices.
Well, I can only what the private sector is saying, and that it's, first of all, on Wednesday we're going to know more. We're going to know about economic growth, and we're going to know about interest rates.
It's a big week.
So
it's a big week for data.
There's so much we don't know, and I don't think even if I was of the mind that the tariffs were going to destroy America, hardly any of them have really gone into effect yet.
Okay, so you think you're in the too soon to tell camp.
Yeah, I mean, the people who care about their profits, the business, the private sector, they have no idea because it's so unpredictable.
Too soon to say. Larry is from the Phil Graham school. He hates tariffs. Trump loves tariffs, but he hates tariffs. Larry, too soon to say? What's your view on the tariffs?
Phil Graham, what a nice draw that was from the old school. So I think that it's a complicated conversation because there's tariffs, there's the threat of tariffs, and then there's the whole idea that, we're supposed to stick by this Friedman doctrinaire idea that all trade needs to be free trade and every tariff is bad. And I certainly don't. The most telling thing in the EU meeting yesterday was when the president of the EU, or chancellor, or whatever the title is, when asked what did the U.S. concede in these deals, she said, well, we started with an imbalance. And what we're attempting to here is balance those things back. That was a huge concession here.
Yeah.
That we have had free trade, we have had no tariffs, and other countries are taking advantage of us, which is what Trump's been saying. So,
Yeah.
long answer to your question, I think the threat of tariffs have been very effective to get things done. Maybe not everything that we were hoping to get, but get more than any president for the last 30 years have gotten from these countries who have been taking advantage of our free trade agreements. And I think that once the tariffs do, if they do end up going into effect, Mark, I think we got to see. I think we have to wait and see where they're targeted.
Okay.
If the tariffs are just going to be on Mercedes and BMWs,
Yeah.
I mean, these are people who can pay for those big ticket
All right.
items.
I'll have to have you guys back once we're past wait and see.
But
yeah. Go ahead.
Economic analysis aside, though, it is impressive how he just steamrolled over the EU.
Amazing.
And,
It's amazing.
Read like the Financial Times.
It's amazing. And again,
Yeah.
say what you want about Donald Trump. No other president would have or could have done this. No other one.
And as they say in Hamilton, he immediately changed the conversation here because now China thought they were going to make a deal with Europe and sort of box us out.
Yeah.
They are now back on their heels.
They are. Yeah.
But
they also say
I wonder if
talk less, smile more.
I wonder if there is like security assistance that, given Trump's irritation with Putin right now, he might have been in the mood to say, we're going to keep funding weapons to Ukraine and things like that. And that might have been part of the sweetener.
Yeah. All right. We're going to get to your questions in a moment. So please raise your hand if you want the conversation. Guys, you probably don't watch the show when you're not on. I'm honest enough to admit that. We got a new game that we play. We're going to do one more topic, but you, the guests, will get to pick the topic. But you do it with your eyes closed and you vote. And so I'll ask you to close your eyes and I'll give you the two topics and you'll pick the one you want to do. And hopefully you pick the same one. Every night we've done this, the guests have picked the same one. Close them up. Michael, close them up. And not close them up the way you play Marco Polo. Close them up for real. Here we go. Here are your two stories, and then I'll give you your choices. Close your eyes. What are you doing, Michael? There you go.
Close my eyes. Okay.
First story is a Sydney Sweeney jeans ad and the left's hostility towards the Sydney Sweeney jeans ad. And the second one is the mob violence in Cincinnati that the right is all inflamed about, even though we can find no evidence to prove that it was racially motivated. All right, here we go. Do you want to talk Sydney Sweeney? Raise your hand. Sydney Sweeney, raise your hand. And do you want to talk Cincinnati mob violence? Michael, you didn't vote. Michael.
I'm not familiar with either one, but
you're not familiar with either one. Larry, if you want to send, you can open your eyes. You were going to do yours because you voted. Larry, if you want to send Michael a Christmas card, ask me for his address.
All right. Thank you. What's Michael's address?
He lives under a rock.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Yeah.
That's where you can address that. All right, Michael, we're going to play. Larry and I are going to summarize the story, and we're going to do it the way the game I play with my son, where we tell the story one sentence each at a time, back and forth. Here we go. Sydney Sweeney, the actress, made some ads for some jeans, American Apparel. I don't know, some jeans.
American
Eagle. Okay, Sydney Sweeney, the actress, made some ads for TV ads for American Eagle. Larry's one sentence. Go ahead.
They're super hot. And
they're super hot, semicolon.
Which, by the way, is, I hesitated to vote for this one, Mark, because it can only get me into trouble.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to go for it. She's a lovely young woman. She's quite buxom, and there is outrage now over a couple of things. But most specifically, they do this double entendre where she talks about how she's got great genes.
Yeah.
And of course, she's talking about her genes. Does anyone remember Brooke Shields and Nothing Gets Between Her and Her?
Yeah.
Yes.
I do.
Yes.
All right, Larry, stop, because you're well over a sentence, even with semicolons. But we're telling Michael the story. And for those members of the community who don't know it, inexplicably, there are people on the left who say this ad is about Nazis and racial supremacy and
I already know how I feel about this.
Yeah, and hostility towards the left. I don't know, something else, Larry.
Yeah, because they're saying that this is, we've gone through quite a bit in our pop culture in terms of reorienting and incorporating diverse faces and names and representation in our advertising. And I think that this might be seen as some kind of, I don't know, by the left, they're seeing this some sort of reassertion of white
Yeah.
supremacy and American dominance by or white dominance by having a beautiful blonde woman say she's got great genes because she's
Yeah.
white and blonde, which is not how I read the story, but
Yeah.
that's how they're reading it because they're mentally ill.
Yeah, and I'll say finally in conclusion, then we're going to go to your questions. This represents to me the most insane reaction of the intolerant left of anything I've seen, to the extent I really understand it, and I can't believe I really do, because it seems so insane. That was all semicolons and commas. Here's it, and there's
these are
genes. She's making a joke about genes, but there's no assertion of white supremacy.
But you know, the person who brought me into this punditry world was Andrew Breitbart, and he famously said that politics is downstream from culture.
Yeah.
This is incredibly important, and it's as Democrats wring their hands and spend $20 million doing their autopsy to figure out why they lost young men in the last election. This is why they lost young men in this election. That they can't let this ad campaign go by without political divisive commentary.
Speaking of young men, Patrick, welcome in. I don't know if you've got a position on Sydney Sweeney. If you please state that, where you're from. And what's on your mind for Larry and Michael?
I don't have any thoughts on Sydney Sweeney. I didn't hear about her until like 5 minutes ago. But I'm from Virginia, and I just had a question for you guys about the Ghislaine Maxwell thing, because I was taking notes on some stuff for a while, and I just came to think about how the whole Epstein scandal seems to always come back to, I guess, the current politics movement away from like luxury beliefs and things like that. And so kind of the Ghislaine Maxwell thing falls into that a little bit over, I guess, America's hatred of how richer people seem to get away with things more easily. And whether or not Ghislaine Maxwell's, not her freedom, but I guess her what she could get back from speaking is with also the value of that. So people don't necessarily want her to be pardoned, but are there other ways that she can be, I guess, gain remedies that are outside of a pardon if her testimony is worth a certain amount in terms of its political outcomes?
You mean like writing a book or giving paid speeches?
Can she be immunized? Is that what you mean?
Like if she were to be pardoned, she still faces charges elsewhere potentially. So it's like, how much is a pardon even worth?
Well, it's interesting, Patrick, as you said, the political outcome. I think the only reason you would ever dare to entertain any kind of immunity for someone who engaged in the horrific crimes that she engaged in is if it leads to more criminal convictions of people, not for political purposes. So if in some way her testimony led to more criminal convictions, and I think some people are suspicious of this because they believe that the investigators didn't want to go there. They wanted to convict her and get her away, but if she could actually lead to some of these powerful people getting convicted, they didn't want to hear about it. They didn't want to know about it because they're protecting the so-called clients. That's, I think, where a lot of the suspicion is stemming from. You know what I mean?
Very well said. Michael, any thoughts on that?
Well, can I just go back to the topic itself of this Epstein thing? Because I find it fascinating. You know, in one sense, as a Democrat, it's fun to see Trump, you know, squirm a little bit and be so angry that the press is focused on something completely, you know, shallow and somewhat irrelevant to the public interest. But because after what Biden went through for a long time, being very boring and trying to pass like legitimate legislation, which Trump believes he did. But clearly both sides, I mean, first of all, I think this is the kind of thing where it's like, not my clowns, not my circus. Trump made his deal with conspiracy theorists a long time ago. He's sort of reaping what he sowed. If there's a backlash to him from that crowd, it's because he entertained them for so long. At the same time, it's all Democrats and the left-wing media wants to talk about, which means, which tells me that they don't have much else to offer at this point. I was watching hosts on a cable news network this morning talk about how Trump's throwing all these distractions out to distract from Epstein. Yet, you know, they're talking, all they're doing is talking about Epstein. I don't know. I just find it an interesting media situation that we're in.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree.
I will say, though, to suggest that things were just so boring under Biden, that's because nobody asked any questions, Michael. I mean, I know you worked for the First Lady, but I mean, let's face it. I mean,
Well,
the things that involved the Biden family that were sort of despicable.
okay.
Those questions were
Well,
asked, really.
I have a lot of disagreements about weaponizing children and family as opposed to focusing on substance. However, there were a lot of things that the president would have preferred to be talking about instead of his son or his age, like the American Rescue Plan, things that are not sexy by the media standards. And I think part of the press that covers the White House was tempered by a very combative relationship with Trump because he was so engaging and loved to jostle with the press. And there was not that kind of dramatic engagement from our more traditional White House, who really didn't know how to drive news anyway.
Yeah.
All for entertainment value.
To your point about Trump sort of dabbling in conspiracies here and there, or at least the audience for conspiracies to build support. And I 100% agree with you. I think one of the major problems with this for the Trump administration that sort of reached ahead a couple of weeks ago is the fact that the deputy director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, incredibly talented and smart guy, this was a major part of building up his name and his reputation in going after what he believed, what he was told were legitimate Epstein scandals. He said he had sources in the Justice Department who said that this thing is, stinks to high heaven. Then he gets in and he says, oh no, case closed. If that's the case, I think he should reveal who those people were in the Justice Department back when he was a podcaster telling him all those things.
All right. Patrick, thank you. Let's go to Bongino question from Polymarket, and curious to see what you guys think about this. Here's the market. They asked, who's going to leave the administration first? Dan Bongino, Pete Hegseth, Pam Bondi, or Howard Lutnick? I'll say them again. There's the numbers. Bongino 30%, Hegseth 20%, Bondi 20%, Lutnick 17%. Larry, what do you think of those numbers?
I think they're pretty on. I wouldn't say in 2020. I would rephrase the question: who will be the first of those four to leave? And I agree it will be Bongino, but I don't know if it's going to be in 25.
Interesting. Michael?
I agree. I think it's Bongino. I think he's the one probably most aside from Hegseth, most ill-suited for government bureaucrat or administrative work. And clearly, like we just spoke about, he made his money off of conspiracy theories, and being on the government side is not as exciting and entertaining as it can be being a podcaster. Pete Hegseth should be the first to go, merely because of competence reasons, but I don't see that. Pam's full disclosure, Pam's a former partner, colleague of mine. She's dutifully qualified. I assume she'll be there for as long as the president wants her. Lutnick, it's interesting that he's not leading these discussions on with China that Bessent is.
Yeah, although they do divide stuff up, and he was with the president dealing with the EU.
I just because I don't want to necessarily be misaligned with that interpretation of my opinion on Dan leaving. Dan knew full well what job he was getting into, and he knew it wasn't going to be as sexy and as high profile as what he had as a podcaster. I think if he leaves, it will be frankly because he's frustrated that things aren't moving fast enough for him. But he knew what he was getting into, and I think that he gave up quite a bit and sacrificed for the job because I think he believed it.
Larry, did you just say it's sexier to be a podcaster than the deputy director of the FBI?
I am so sexy.
Yeah, too sexy for this mic. Anyway, to check out that market and others, go to polymarket.com. There are our partners and sponsor on this program. All right, I want to ask you about Ron Klain, someone Michael knows. Larry, you know Ron Klain?
I ran into him a couple of times at Fox News, where he was dressed very nice from the waist up, but wearing gym shorts on the waist down.
Oh, come on, a tie and gym shorts?
Oh yeah, yeah, because he was behind the panel,
Yeah, interesting. So Ron Klain, by accounts of members of both parties, testified without taking the fifth fully when he was there last week, unlike some of Michael's other former colleagues who did take the fifth. Michael,
former roommates.
Well, yeah,
Former roommates.
former roommates. Which ones are your roommates?
Well, Anthony was my roommate for a year on the road.
Oh, okay, on the road. Got it. Okay.
Oh, on the campaign. Okay.
So what? Why is Ron not taking the fifth? I'm not criticizing him for it. Why would he not take the fifth and everyone else is?
The bigger question is why? Right. I mean, I agree with you. Why were two or three people who worked for Ron taking the fifth, and their boss is not? I think that's an interesting question, and I don't know if the committee lawyers asked Ron that, but I would have asked him that. Why were the people reporting to you who spoke to us not or not cooperating?
But Ron's the outlier, right? Everyone else, as far as we know, has taken the fifth
so far. So why?
I think
Like what are they worried about that Ron isn't? I guess would be the way I'd phrase it. Larry, any thoughts?
I mean,
yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Well, I would just say from my experience, look, Annie Tomasini and Anthony Bernal were if you had keys to a kingdom, they had the keys, and they would probably be able to permit Ron to go through the gate, but Ron didn't necessarily control that gate to the things that the core committee wants to know. And I think probably feels like, they want to be guardians of the private life and the schedule of Joe Biden. And now they're dealing with the consequences. So I think if I had to guess, Ron is probably like.
So you're saying the White House chief of staff the former White House chief of staff could testify without taking the fifth because he knows less than those people who worked for him did? Is that what you're saying?
In terms of the aging process and what they experienced, Ron didn't travel, and Ron was not, these guys were there before the campaign, during the campaign, and had the most access physically to the Bidens and the Biden family.
True.
And controlled the access. Ron was, the most powerful political policy person, but he wasn't seeing the after hours side the way these two did.
Right. I take that point, but Larry, this is my mystery that applies to Michael's friend Jake Tapper, as well as to Ron Klain. This fiction that they couldn't see what was happening is a fiction because you didn't need to be in the private rooms to see it. Ron's not a stupid person. So I mean, what's the most charitable explanation for Ron Klain claiming he didn't really see it?
Well, we don't know that he said that yet, right? We only know that
that's what he said publicly.
Oh, did he? All right. Yeah, well, I don't think there is a charitable explanation for that. I saw Pete Buttigieg today say that he didn't see it either. We all saw it, and we weren't in the cabinet, right? We didn't work in the Oval Office.
Yeah, so we didn't need it.
I think the most charitable thing you can say is that Ron Klain is a patriot, and he wants to tell the truth. And if that leads to reforms in how the 25th Amendment is administered in future administrations, that's good for our country and good for our republic. And so he doesn't want to take the fifth. That's the most charitable thing you can say. I don't think that's the truth, though. I think that Ron Klain is a political animal. He's a survivor, and he's made the calculation that this is how he lives to fight another day and perhaps work in the next administration or work on the next campaign.
Interesting. Michael, what's your favorite of the amendments to the Constitution?
Wow, it's a question I've never been asked. I mean, I guess the freedom of speech.
You're a big number one guy. Larry.
1 and 2 are pretty fantastic, I have to say. They go hand in hand for me.
Yeah, I'm a big 4 guy. Hey, Cal, did you still want to ask a question? Yeah, all right. I think I might have lowered Cal's hand. Cal,
don't get me started on that 19th Amendment, though.
Oh, I understand. Cal, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know.
Was it the Volstead Act? Isn't that your favorite, Larry?
Tell Larry loves them all. Cal, tell folks where in South Carolina you live and what's on your mind.
The huge metropolis growing every day, Sumter, Jim Clyburn's birthplace. So anyway, on my mind is international affairs, not South Carolina. So they're meeting with the Chinese in Stockholm, right? There's been rumors in the the academic world that watches China. There's some kind of power struggle going on within the Central Committee, right, in China, which very similar to the Soviets. You don't find out that she's not in charge until like 10 years after he's not in charge, right? They're kind of similar to when they ousted Khrushchev. But and then like a little known thing that came in the news this weekend is that the president of Taiwan was traveling to or was going to travel to South America, and we refused him admittance to New York, right? And do you think that with potential power struggles, trade, Chinese economy has been a bad thing? Does your sources say that there's an opening with us in China, that maybe we can de-escalate, the kind of semi-Cold War we're in with them? Does your sources feel that way, or do you think it's just going to be some kind of placeholder deal and there's going to be no further diplomacy? So leave it open.
I've got an answer, but I'll turn it over to my guests first if they want to weigh in.
Well, I was dismayed by the actions with Taiwan, but I've got to think that this was communicated. Taiwan knows that we're their #1 ally and protector. I'm sure it was communicated ahead of time that we're going to do this. It's because we've got these conversations with China, but we're still standing by you. Still, I don't like the look of it, but I recognize why it had to be done.
Michael.
Same. And, from what I've heard from, colleagues who worked in the first Trump administration, and particularly a colleague who worked for Stephen Miller and Navarro, is that the meetings, Bessent, the Chinese consider Bessent more of a honest broker. It says a lot about the relationship between him and Trump, and where Navarro, Lutnick, and even Jameson, Greer are right now, that they're not leading these trade negotiations, but that they are really trying to get a 90-day extension so they have enough time to hammer out some of the meat, but be able to announce a summit with Trump and Xi probably in October. That's what I've been told.
If I can just say the second part of the question in terms of, figuring out a way out of the Cold War with China and maybe tamp things down, we always have to bear in mind, and I think the Trump administration is fully aware of this, China doesn't want that. China, they have a game plan and an end game, and they play a long game. And ultimately, even if there's a temporary détente here and we try to work something out trade-wise, they aren't good actors here, and they are malicious. And we need.
Are you saying they don't want to not have a Cold War? Or are you saying that they want a Cold War and they see it as an existential struggle?
I think they will only agree to some sort of extension of better relations right now if it serves their purpose in the long term, which is to dominate the world.
Yeah. I have a slightly different view. I think Larry's description is correct, but my reporting has long suggested that almost everything that's going on now in terms of Greenland, Panama, the trade war, NATO, even Gaza, it's all about making a big play to pitch to China to carve up the world. The way they used to talk about carving up China as a melon during the imperialist phase.
Like World War II when the leaders carved it up.
Yeah. So that what Trump's goal is to spend less bandwidth and resources on containing China by saying to China, you can have some stuff, but leave us our stuff and stop making everything around the globe a big fight. That's my understanding of what's going on. And I see everything through that prism.
And by the way, that's why the Japan, Philippines, and the Indonesia deal last week were actually probably even bigger than the EU. Not bigger in terms of scale and dollars.
Huge.
Well,
huge.
I would say you can see every one of these trade deals through that prism of containing China. Everyone. Yep. And you've got people in the administration, including the president, who are students of the past failure of the previous 5 presidents to figure out how to gain leverage over China to keep them from being on the march, so our grandchildren aren't all learning Mandarin. And Trump has a plan.
Too many characters.
Yeah.
But I'm not an expert on economic trade policy, but from what I recall, 8 years ago, Obama tried to open up the region for us to control by pushing through a trade agreement that would have had us have leverage over China and the Pan Pacific. Am I not
TPP TPP, but the problem always with TPP is that it would favor the allies over favoring domestic U.S. economics, very similar to a Cold War structure where in the Cold War, we allowed the Europeans to have a lot of economic success at our expense to keep them from going over to the communists.
Couldn't agree more with that. Couldn't agree more. Cal,
but wasn't that still an attempt to keep China at that? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, but if it didn't lead with our manufacturing base and with our,
it makes no sense.
Exactly. Cal, you know how many characters you need to read to be able to read a Chinese newspaper?
Is it several thousand?
Yeah, 2,000 or 3,000. So you're right.
Yeah.
That's the main reason to fight the communists. Yeah. Cal, thank you. Great topic. One of my favorites. Dan, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks where you live in New Hampshire. How far you live from Lake Winnipesaukee, for instance, would be a good.
An hour from Lake Winnipesaukee. Live in Nashua.
In Nashua. I love Nashua.
Yeah.
The Tara Sheridan in Nashua. It's no longer the Tara Sheridan, is it?
It's not. It's changed hands a couple of different times.
But when it was the Tara Sheridan, man, I had so many memorable experiences in that hotel. First of all, it's built to look like a castle. It's the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. I'll just tell you one of my favorites.
That's where the Biden victory party was, Mark.
Yeah, exactly. Biden victory party was there. Pat Buchanan was giving a speech there in '92, and Ralph Hallow of the Washington Times, who couldn't have been a more pro-Pat reporter. It's like the political reporter for the Washington Times. And he and I were in the men's room, and one of Pat's supporters heard us talking and heard that Ralph was a reporter, but didn't know he was one of the few reporters there who didn't hate Pat. I didn't hate Pat. I loved Pat. So he took Ralph's cell phone and he grabbed it out of his hand and he threw it in the toilet, right in the Sheridan Tara, in the Sheridan in Nashua. Anyway, Dan, probably not the topic you called to talk about.
No, I wanted to talk about the domestic issue.
Okay, please.
Minneapolis. Man goes berserk, stabs 11 people.
Yeah, horrible.
He's prevented from continuing by an armed citizen.
Yes, sir.
Michael, why do you express some discontent with the Second Amendment?
Did Michael express discontent with the Second Amendment, or you just
assuming? He did.
Yeah, he caught that.
When I said I like the first and the second, Michael reacted. Yeah.
I just think that, the premise of that amendment was designed when we were, British soldiers were, what was the word, quartering? I mean, it was designed for muskets being used during the Revolutionary War for citizens to protect themselves. It wasn't to carry out, it wasn't designed for.
That's like saying freedom of the press doesn't apply to electronic journalism. Come on.
Well, we amend that.
It's an imperfect but important metaphor.
Section 42. We can amend an amendment that was created in the 1700s as well if those amendments are abused and taken out of context. And
I think if the Democrats were true to what they really believe, they would make that attempt. They should try to repeal the Second Amendment.
Dan, let me ask you a Second Amendment question.
Yeah,
you got people in the country who have a broad view of the Second Amendment, as I suspect from your question you do. Right to bear arms, pretty absolute.
Can't live free or die.
Live free or die. You can't own a bazooka, but
you can actually.
Actually, you can.
Okay.
And a cannon.
Yeah. Okay. And then there are people who are like the Mike Bloomberg school that says like this is an anachronistic old thing. There are too many guns in America. We're the only country that has all the guns. Which side has more legitimate understanding of the other side's point of view? Would you say? Do you think your side or their side has more legitimate understanding of the other side?
I think the live free or die side has a better understanding.
Okay,
of
explain.
Historical context.
Okay, good. Well, not historical context. I'm asking in the current context
of
public
context,
debate.
But the idea behind.
So explain. Okay, so explain their position, not the historical founders thing, but explain their position that our courts should evaluate cases on the Second Amendment in a very narrow way, and that you don't have the right to own an assault weapon, and banning handguns is consistent with the Second Amendment. Explain your understanding of that point of view.
I'm a little confused by your question, so let me try to answer it as I understand it.
Yeah.
The left refuses to engage in real discussion about the other perspective. And that can be about social issues as well as it can be about firearms.
But just stick with me on the second. Just stick with me on the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
You know intellectually what they believe. They believe that the Second Amendment should be there. Just explain your understanding of your appreciation for their point of view. How would you describe their point of view in understanding terms?
Oh, in understanding terms. Their perspective, their world is one in which they must have control. And because they must have control, giving individuals the opportunity to decide for themselves is anathema.
Larry, go ahead, Larry. Go ahead, Larry.
I think, first of all, Dan, and thank you for raising it the way that you did, especially with regard to the stabbing at the Walmart. I think it's an important story that did not get enough coverage.
Correct.
I believe that there are some people who see gun control as a way of person control. I don't disagree with that. But I think that your typical neighbor who puts up the anti-gun sign in their front yard, a mom who was worried about school shootings, I think that that's not her focus. And I think a lot of people who hold the position that we need some common sense gun safety measures, which is the new buzzword for gun control, they believe that there are too many guns out there, and bad people or crazy people can kill way too many people way too quickly because of the ubiquitous availability of guns. And I do understand their position, Mark, because I was once emotional and naive in the way I looked at the world. But see, it's funny, when I think of my daughter having to go to college and facing potentially a sexual assault or a kidnapping or something, I have a daughter who's about to start grad school on the East Coast. I wish that college allowed her to defend herself on campus so that she can even things out. In fact, my daughter is physically disabled, and she could very easily be a target of somebody to do something horrible to her. I don't understand the emotional argument that we've got to get rid of guns instead of the emotional argument that our daughters should be able to defend themselves from brutal attacks. See, that's emotional too.
Yeah.
And those guns are very, very effective in allowing people to defend themselves, and they should have the right to do so. In fact, they do have the right to do so. That's
Dan, thank you for coming on.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. And we got to stop because we're at time, but grateful. I know it flew by, Larry. Michael and Larry, love having you two on. Hope you'll come back even more regularly than you have so far. Grateful to everybody for watching. I'll see you at 9 a.m. Eastern time with Sean and Dan tomorrow, and this program will be on tomorrow night. Inexplicably, we won't be canceled or go on hiatus. So I'll see you at 23 hours. And gentlemen, again, grateful to Michael and Larry for being part of tonight's episode. Have a good evening. See you at 9 a.m.